Welcome to Do You Even Fail, the business failure podcast about failures, flops, and face plants. Super excited today. We have Eric in the room. Eric and I met about 7-8 months ago, I would say. Maybe a little bit less.
Summertime.
Yeah, summertime. Right away out of the gate, Eric was one of the guys that understood that life is not as simple as we all like to make it look on the front. As we talk about in our first episode, so easy to live an Instagram real life. Eric saw my life was not that. He read right through it, had amazing conversations. He comes from an extensive background in corporate America, as well as executive coaching and leadership and mentorship. If you want to hop in, tell them a little bit about your background, where you started, where you are today, and then we can get more into the podcast. But it's nice to know who's in the room with us.
Right.
Tell us their story.
So I generally like to start with, in the general, who I am. I'll talk to you how God spoke to me when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And I had been playing hockey, and a cousin of mine was really good. Another cousin was halfway decent, and I'm skating with my ankles inward. And God said to me, play basketball, young man. That's your calling. So when I was 8 years old, that's when I started playing basketball. And that really formed the basis for how I handle a lot of different things going in life, whether it be my corporate world, whether it be my relationships with my family, with friends. I ended up playing at Hamline University back in the late 80s and had a great group of guys that are still my brothers.
Yeah.
But that really kind of gave me the underpinnings of all this value structure that led to corporate America. Spent a good amount of time with companies like State Farm Insurance and Thomson Reuters, where I was leading global teams to be able to go and sell different products in their sales marketing, basically running P&L off on that. And then since 2011, have been running my own company called the Afila Group, which has been involved in things such as peer group roundtables, as well as one-on-one executive leadership coaching and basketball coaching.
So throughout the process, I know when we spoke, you had a pretty interesting story of how you transitioned from one career to the next. I think it's super applicable when we talk about the failure space. Some people end up in a spot where they feel like there is no next step. I'd love for you, if you're open to it, kind of walk through that, how it's not always where you feel like the next turn is for your opportunity isn't always what seems to be right in front of you in the moment.
Right. When I ended up leaving Thomson Reuters in 2008, it took me a while to figure out what was going on. I ended up landing a couple of different jobs. And one of the jobs, I was actually involved in a peer group roundtable for the next layer down, not the chief executive, but people of the executive team. And I really kind of liked that. It was kind of cool. I was learning a lot, being able to go back and forth with a variety of different people. And I wanted to do it after my first job after Thomson, but my wife was really liking the paycheck every other week.
Yeah.
So didn't let me.
A 2-week rotation's nice.
Exactly.
It comes and then it goes.
Exactly. And when they have the paycheck next week, then you know where things are going. But I wasn't happy. I ended up finding out afterwards that I was in the middle and deepest parts of a 10-year case of high-functioning depression.
Okay.
During that time.
Wow.
So I was already really low in where things were at. So I wasn't happy. But as I was going, it's like, okay, this corporate America working for the man thing just isn't going to work. I'm not into the politics and all the rat race. But what is it that I am good at? And where is it I think I can have some fun?
Yeah.
And that led to the peer group roundtable, the Afila Group, which served sales, marketing, and product leaders.
Yeah.
Things that I had some good experience in. I had some reasonable connections. I had some different thoughts. So I ended up starting that company in 2011, right in the bottom of the depression.
Yeah.
So not the greatest thing to do.
Yeah, you're like, wasn't the smartest move.
Might have been considered a failure.
Yeah.
But all things considered, we're now 12 years on.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
So even through all the different things that have been going on through the years with that, ended up kind of being successful. But, and I don't know if you want to get into some of this failure. Part of the depression aspect is in April of 2011, I went and did the strongest thing I ever did in my life, and that was to ask for help.
Okay.
I was failing left and right, whether it be with my sons. I was a horrible father with my wife. She was walking on eggshells all the time. With the kids that I was coaching my older son's sixth grade team, and I had kids say that they didn't want to play basketball anymore.
Wow.
So for someone who had God speak to him when
Yeah.
he was 8 years old to say, play basketball, this is going to, basically run your life. To have kids say, I don't want to play because Coach Eric made it such a bad experience was absolutely mind-boggling to me. So I asked for help. And that became basically a 5-year process of internally trying to figure out what it is that drove me, where I was happy, where I was doing good things. And that came out in the mix to what I ended up finding out, and I called it and wrote in a book released last year called The 4 Fundamental Forces of Leadership.
Okay.
And those 4 fundamental forces, first ones being love, respect, seeing again, service, and fun. And we can get into those in a little bit if you want to dig deeper. But I brought those into my own personal being and then brought them out to a basketball team of sixth graders, saying, you have my unconditional love, and went through this process of trying to build cultures based on these 4 fundamental forces. And have even done that with the executives that I've coached, telling them that they have my unconditional love.
Yeah.
Imagine
Yeah,
how
right.
much of a
Oh,
failure
yeah.
that could be, how provocative that statement
Yeah, I would say how
is.
provocative, right? You're walking on in a new territory.
Yeah,
for
I
lot
had
of
a
people.
client that used to work for Amazon, and I told him that the first time we were together, and
He's like, you're weird.
Okay.
So, like, I'm uncomfortable.
yeah, it's like, okay. By the time we got done after a year, he said, Eric, you helped me learn how to love my team.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's part and parcel. The failure aspect, that's one thing that I push myself to failure.
Yeah.
I try and find out and find that edge, because if you don't push to failure, if you don't chase failure and you just chase success, the success will be here. Failure happens up here, and there's all this growth that you can have when you actually push to failure.
Yeah.
Seek it out, try and figure out how you grow from it, and then where
Yeah.
the ultimate failure may be, and then you're comfortable to say, hey, that's as far as I can go.
So I definitely want to touch later on this chasing failure part, but I'm going to go back to where this spurred from. When you talk about high functioning depression, I think this is really important, because right now, a lot of professionals, I feel like, that are in between their 30 and 40s are waking up, including myself a few months ago. And I just one day woke up and I was like, life as a whole, you're just like, well, why? Like, what am I doing? You're like, I'm in my 30s. I still have like 30 years of career left. Do I even like what I'm doing? Why am I doing this? And you just kind of get in this funk where everything loses its luster. And to me, it was a really weird space to get into. All of a sudden, it was like everything that I enjoyed was just blah. All the people I loved to hang out with was fun. But it was like I'm hanging out with them for basically a dopamine hit. And then I go home and I sit in the same headspace of, okay, well, where's this purpose? And me coming from faith, I really struggle with it, because I'm supposed to find it in the Lord
Right.
and have my peace in there. But I would love to have you break down that concept more, because I feel like a lot of people are sitting at home right now or in their cars going, what does that mean? Holy cow, I might not be alone, but if I'm still them, I can't contextualize that better, and I think you could help them.
Sure. So the technical medical diagnosis term for it is called dysthemia.
Okay.
And that is a not necessarily low grade, but not really kind of critical that
Yeah.
you might worry about whether someone's going to question their life.
Yeah.
But low grade, but it has an impact on your function, and it's chronic. So generally over a period of months and even years,
Yeah.
that you're involved with this, and you feel down. For me, I ended up pushing down all these emotions to try and keep myself from feeling all that stuff going on. And then at inopportune times, I would just blow up,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
snap in front of my family, in front of the kids I was coaching, in front of the people that I was trying to lead.
Yep.
That second job that I mentioned to you after Thomson Reuters, before I started a Feeler Group, I actually parted ways with them because I actually snapped at a couple of employees.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult. But so there's different grades of this dysthemia, but you kind of mentioned you just kind of, you got maybe a dopamine hit from someone because you crave to get some good feeling because you know you're not feeling good.
Right.
You're not happy. You have this anxiety, these things welling up that you don't want to let out because you know it's not good.
Yeah, you know it's ugly. You're like, you can't let that be.
But eventually
it
you
comes
can't
out.
control it.
Right.
And just think about depression. You're depressing
Okay.
things.
Yeah, okay.
So
All right.
when I ended
True.
up talking to the therapist that I ended up going to, she mentioned in that way, you're depressing things. You're trying to push that down. And yeah, until you can't anymore, for me at least. But yeah, the thoughts of just real sadness. I would put myself down in the basement after work or whatever and kind of keep myself away from the kids and my wife, and knowing I couldn't handle all the stimulation that was going on or what have you. And I wanted to be with someone, but I didn't want to talk to. I didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
I could not cry for years.
Yeah.
I could not cry. It would come up to my throat, and I would push it back down. And that was amazing. And I dealt with depressive episodes multiple times in my past, and I'd always worked through them. But this was different.
Yeah.
I wasn't even playing basketball. I was choosing to not play basketball.
Right.
On Sunday nights with the guys, I'm like, no, I'm just feeling too down. I don't have the energy. Now that's someone like me. Then you definitely know that mentally I'm not doing well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm not sitting there playing ball.
Yeah. So I mean, from what I know about you, absolutely love it. And then, one, I'm appreciating the vulnerability here we're getting into. I mean, this is what this podcast is about, and it makes me think about my last year. When you talk about pressing it down, I feel so dumb. I never like connected those two, but dots, depression, and pushing it down. But for me, yeah, it was, you get into this weird space where how you talked about you went in the basement. My thing was I'd get home and I just want to pour a drink and just disconnect from the world and mask it and hustle. So if I wasn't having a drink, then I'm working really hard, because then I could push out any distraction around me and ignore it. And you're right. What would started happening over the last few months is I would just snap at people. You just go off, and all of a sudden you leave. You're like, what are you doing? Like, that was so mean, so disrespectful, out of character. And I love that you bring up the therapy piece, because I finally actually went back to my therapist. She fired me. I didn't take it serious enough. And she's like, hey, until you want to help yourself, this isn't going to work. And so I went through almost this whole year, didn't have any help. And last week was my first session again. It's,
oh, good for you.
Yeah. It's going back there and sitting down. And it was such a different situation. The first time I went, I was like, my wife wants me to go. I just want to be a better person. And this time, honestly, it was the first time I'm crying. I have lists of things I want to work on. And you were ready to stop pressing and start bringing it to the surface, but you don't want to do it alone, right?
Right.
And so I just think it's incredible. It's so many people, including me, all kind of poo-pooed depression, but it's so many different levels. I'm not going to say I've had what other people have had, but that high functioning, I appreciate bringing to the table, makes it more practical that, maybe there is something people out there can relate to now and work through. So
yeah. And even through those times, they say, high functioning, that has grades.
Oh, it does.
Obviously.
Right.
But when you're down in the dumps, your productivity just, for me as an introvert, found out, and I've started therapy again over this last year, found out that actually I've been autistic for my life.
Wow.
I used to rock constantly.
Yeah.
As just a self-calming mechanism, and stimulation just kind of gets me going and just wears me out. But yeah, when you're in those tough times, you're not high functioning.
Yeah, no, you're not.
Just trying to plug away at something.
Yeah, so true.
I would just say, okay, let me knock some things out, just basic non-thinking, and try and get the ball rolling down the hill a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you get a couple wins, and then you start feeling a little better about yourself, and then you eventually kind of get yourself going. But there's still this up and down, and and that's the thing when you get about work, is that I've been thinking about this, and I deal with this with the people that I coach. The balance of getting in to truly know the people that you're working with and what might be going on in their world. versus the HR things of there's this
Yeah.
arm's
Right,
length
yeah.
relationship that getting into that stuff's kind of taboo.
Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble. And,
Right.
yeah, even though it's out of love, it's still
Right,
And I
exactly.
shouldn't say that either. Wait, pull it.
Right.
Yeah.
So the concept of actually saying that love is a fundamental force has been one of great discussion amongst people in business. Say,
Yeah.
boy, I love the way that you're saying that because there needs to be
Right.
more of that in business. We don't have that in business. It's not personal; it's business, which is
I
a
know.
load of crap.
It is. And
yeah.
I've tried to convince myself it's just business, but in the end, if it's just business, then I'm not. How do you find meaning, right? Everyone wants to find meaning. And I'm like, well, make it more than just business,
Right.
And then you'll find it. Until then, it is just a transaction. You'll never find that desire of I want to have a purpose inside of this organization.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to that.
And in the depression, you end up losing that because
Yeah.
you just go and chasing. And you and I've talked about your situation where you were just chasing this, somewhat vision, but you just wanted to grow this business and, meet the people and get in the circles. And then until you said,
Until they woke up.
ain't it.
It's like this
You know.
is not where you're gonna
Right.
find hope or happiness at all. Emma, I feel like any thoughts over there you're trying to riff on or
Well, yeah, I do just think it's kind of interesting that a lot of people will say, as you mentioned, that it's not personal, it's just business. But fundamentally, most businesses are built on relationships, and you can't
Exactly.
you can't run a business without people. And
Yep.
what are people? Of course, it's going to be personal, interpersonal dynamics, and whatever they have at their home life is going to possibly spread into their work life and affect their mindset. So it's very interesting to me that people try to artificially create this very as Eric said, this very HR approach of, this is just business, personal life is personal, there's no crossover. I feel like that's more of wishful thinking on the business side of, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just have everybody have no emotions at all and just be maximum productivity? But I think people really, harness their emotions for good, and a lot of people can actually grow and be more productive and just better in business in general if they have some passion behind what they're doing.
I was just thinking the word passion. Like you remove that when you remove personal.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit counterintuitive for maybe sort of the HR side, but I think most people I know that have been successful or have adapted and overcome obstacles and scaled a business or just built a successful personal life have done it from a place of passion and meaning and seeing value in what they're doing, not just blindly checking the boxes. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. Awesome. So I definitely hijacked the beginning of the conversation. I know you've done some prep work. So as we get into this failure side, I'm loving where we're going. Any pre-prep story you wanted to set up for the audience on a major failure you want to bring to the table and share?
There's so many freaking failures, whether it be on the basketball coaching side, whether it be business. But one that kind of came to me, I was at Thomson Reuters. I'm responsible for this regional group that sells product for sister companies around the world into Canada, the U.S., and the Caribbean. And one of my constituents is a sister company up in Canada, and I sell them in the States and in the Caribbean. And I'm talking with the president of the company about something that was in my head about shifting some dollars, some revenue dollars, and just kind of making it so it's a little bit easier. And I got an absolute carving of my rectum. Don ended up just carving me a new one. It's like, what are you thinking? That's not going to happen, blah, 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 because it was an aspect of just money. And they were really small, 100 million compared to 3 billion.
Yeah.
Just really the little stepchild type of thing. So I didn't recognize or even bounce off of someone else what might be the frequency that Don is thinking of? What is his big concern? How do I address what he needs while still trying to bring up this conversation? I just went with the pitch.
Okay.
And he just went at me. And then I told my boss, he went, "Oh yeah, I totally get that." I could see why he just tore you a new one.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, good. So if I'd actually talked to my boss beforehand saying this is what I was kind of thinking and, working that, or, handled the conversation a little bit differently, it might have gone a little bit different. So, but it wasn't a permanent failure. And I don't know if Don saw it was just this young buck maybe trying to do the right thing or something like that. But we ended up building a great relationship. And rumor had it when I left Thomson Reuters, he was talking to the executive team saying that they made a mistake by letting me go.
Okay.
But there's these little things that you just kind of that come at me, and everybody was just like, "Oh boy, did I really screw the pooch on that one?"
Yeah.
And that conversation with Don was one of them.
So from what it sounds like, you had this great idea, and you were so excited. You pulled what I like to call, Devin Amrick does a lot of 0 to 100, and you just went and pitched it. Didn't take time to think about other angles, devil's advocate, opposite side of the conversation. And in the end, you were like, well, that was actually probably not the best idea, and I deserve to get destroyed for it.
Right. And, I'm sitting there because I was sitting there. It's like, Don, I'm working for you just as much as I'm working for this boss over at the bigger, my direct line boss. When I can be successful, you're going to be successful too. So it was in this context that we're on the same team.
Right.
And this is a way that we could probably facilitate some different, activities to be able to go and drive the overall number, because then we double counted all this BS, but parse it out where he wouldn't have actually been harmed at all. It was a perception thing. And I didn't have the political wherewithal and foresight to be able to see that at his level, that this is something that's big.
So how would you pitch it differently? What would have you done in that conversation to not have to persuade, but instead just bring realization to the table in the conversation?
There's probably a variety of ways I could have done it. And I write this in my book when someone comes up with what might be a great idea.
Yeah.
In asking the boss a question instead of like being the oracle information and giving the answer.
Okay.
That you actually go and help them think of the different questions. Is their logic appropriate? You may see that there's a couple of steps. Can what about if you checked here? What might they think? Or, what would be the implications if we do this on that, and help them find their own way?
Yeah.
If I changed it, I probably would have gone to my boss and first said, hey, I'm sitting here seeing this, end goal being this.
How do we
Here's
get
how
there?
we can get there. First get his buy-in.
Yep.
And see where things could be. And I knew I wouldn't have a problem with it, but just to kind of make sure that duck is in the row, talk to him. It's like, okay, so I need to chat with Don about this, obviously, and I'm thinking this, and then he'd push back and say, yeah. And as I would think back, it would be, instead of saying, hey, we got this, I want to do this, Don, here's some issue. I kind of see this here, that there's an opportunity to do some stuff here that we're not doing, not able, structures aren't set up or whatever. What do you think? And this is something that a boss before this had mentioned to me, is helping the whoever figure out that it was their idea.
Oh yeah, right.
That you actually just, seed it and do everything and let them percolate and come up with some ideas. And now they're starting to take ownership of it, accountability. And it's that type of conversation going on. But instead of saying, hey, I want to take this money from you and move it here, or this, that, or the other thing, that you start engaging in a different way to get them to be a part of that potential solution.
Yeah.
And because they may say things that you don't, and you come up with something a little bit different, but it's going to work out great.
Yeah. Reminds me when I was younger, Hormel Foods, back in the day, I used to work for them. And I'm a big fan of remembering, as we're younger and as we continue to grow in business, we're in a swim lane. And the pool is a lot bigger than that one lane. But we only see the one lane. Outside of those lane lines, we don't see the rest of the big picture, right? And so from our perspective, like, this is the best move. And it's like, well, it is for your swim lane, but
And you
what
might see
ripple
you
effect-
might see the lane right next to you, but you don't see lane
You don't
8.
see lane 8 and what ripple effect it has there. And so I was sitting in a meeting once, just one of the most arrogant moments of my life. I was this young guy, Hormel Foods VP of marketing comes in the room and they're talking to us. And so I raise my hand. I go, hey, why haven't you ever marketed this way? just call it out. And from amazing leadership, I didn't see us coming. And he goes, well, tell me why you think we should. I was like, okay. And then next thing I know, his second in command, she speaks up and a debate pursues. And I'm like, I'm super out of my league right now. Like, what have I done? However, out of leadership, they go, okay, we'll go back and create an entire pitch and bring it to us. And so what was interesting when I came back and pitched it to them, they came back and coached me and said, hey, it's actually phenomenal. We want to use some of this, but your approach was horrific.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I mentioned a little earlier about the boss saying, well, what about these things? Then go take a look at that and let's keep building on it.
Right. And then and so it's so relatable where there's all these other pieces that go into the equation. And it's learning to work backwards from your end result, like you said. And I'm a big fan of at Dell right now. When I try and promote people, when we sit down with the executive team at Dell, I go, hey, let's set up questions first that lead to our answer. But then we don't give our answer if all 5 questions aren't a yes, because then we know they're going to disagree. So let's answer the 1 or 2 no's first and just avoid friction as a complete. Like, do you agree with this statement? Do you agree with this angle, this trend? And that way, because you normally, if you give an answer to an executive at Dell, they're super intelligent human beings, just like we all are, but you get destroyed. So to avoid it, if these 5 don't lie, we know, hey, we need to get our ducks in a row on this swim lane.
Right.
And then we can come back and give a recommendation.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. So when we're talking about failure, you said it earlier. I love the idea of chasing failure. And you said you have to chase it. I'm a huge fan of it. I over chased it this year and just, ate dirt and just kept chewing on it like it was a beet, because people love beets and they taste like earth. I don't. So
beets are awful. That mushrooms, it ain't happening.
I'm like, you may as well just eat earth. So talk to me about chasing failure and why you think that creates greater growth than chasing success.
Well, let me go and give some context to that term, chasing failure. There's a guy named Ryan Leak, as opposed to not the football player, Ryan Leaf, but this guy was a Division III basketball All-American, and he got into his 27th, 28th year, and he's playing at the Y, and he's just killing it, and everyone's saying that he should be in the league, in the NBA, and he's like, you know what? That's interesting. I haven't dedicated, but I kind of wonder if I can go and get a tryout. And he says, I am going to chase failure. I'm going to figure out the point where I cannot succeed anymore, that I push to the ends. And his goal was to get a tryout with an NBA team. So he wrote to all 30 teams saying, hey, I'm Ryan Leak. I'm this Division III All-American. I'm doing this, and I am chasing failure. I want to see the point where I can get no better. And I'm doing this. I'm doing all these different things because I want to see if I can make it in the NBA. And there was one team that actually offered him that tryout, the Phoenix Suns. And to make a long story short, he goes through all these different drills. First one's 3-point shooting, 20 spots around the arc, and he made 13 of them. Coach says, hey, not bad. Most of our guards, they can go and hit 16 or 17. Not quite there. Goes through every drill, just not quite there. And the last one that they do in this hour-and-a-half workout is going down and backs for 3 minutes. Killers is a different type of form for those that might know killers a little bit better. But it's just going all the way down and back. And he's sitting there and he's calculating because coach says, our big guys can do 26, 28 in 3 minutes. Guards like you should be able to get 32 to 34. Okay, that's 1 every 6 seconds. I can do that. Yeah. Starts doing 6 seconds per, and then he doesn't. It gets to be about a minute. And there's these guys, the team, they're sitting on the sidelines, they're warming up, getting ready for practice, and they're kind of chuckling. It's like, here's this guy, he thinks he can be one of us. He ain't got it. He's getting put down. He's being shown that he's eating beets.
Yeah, he's eating beets. He's being humbled.
But minute and a half, 2 minutes come in, and he's still busting. He's still working it. He's not going to get to the number, but he's still doing it. And they start cheering him and cheering him and egging him on. Keep it going, finish, finish, finish. And he gets done. And he realized that he wasn't good enough to be an NBA player. But at that very moment, he was on an NBA team.
Yeah.
Because the players gave him that respect and love to be able to go out there. And then so afterwards he goes and says he's playing at the Y, and people say, man, you should play in the league, man. He's like, yeah, I did. I tried.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. So that was that aspect. But his statement is that he had in his book and what he does in speaking, I learned so much more by chasing failure
Okay.
than I ever learned by chasing success.
Yeah.
Because he could have said, oh, I'm going to see if I can go and play in Europe or Australia or Canada or something like that. He was pushing for the moon, and he did everything. And by the time he found different failure points, he was able to go and figure out how to work around them and get himself better to be able to take that and then continue to grow.
Yeah.
And so I use that same concept with the players that I coach and the leaders that I coach to be able to go and help them get into a different mindset. It's easier with kids. You're coaching kids. I coach 4th through 8th grade generally. Screw up now. You're going to get bigger. You're going to get faster. You're going to get stronger. You're going to get smarter. So the things that you screw up on now, you're going to learn. So why just do what you know you can do?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to celebrate the crap out of you when you try and do something silly and stupid.
Right.
Because I want that reinforcement there that trying to build upon yourself is a good thing.
Right.
So then but with executive leaders, it's a little bit different when you're in business. It's like, okay, you actually want me to go and encourage people to fail, to
Right.
screw up? And there is that balance, isn't there, Devin, where there's, bet the farm failure.
Right.
and going and trying to talk to Don Van Meer
Yeah.
failure, saying I'd like to do
Yeah.
this, or say why aren't we marketing to this group? That type of failure.
Right.
It's a huge learning lesson
Yes.
that you had with the VP and the director of marketing to say the way you went about it really
Right.
blows.
That was a bad. Yeah.
It was a really, but you got on their radar, and then you actually proved some things. So
Yeah.
it ended up being a good stuff, even though you failed. They were good enough leaders to be able to
Yes.
help you see through the failure to the ideas, that they were open enough to be able to go and say, this is some good stuff.
Yeah.
And, if you ended up knocking on their door or something afterwards, you probably got in.
Right. Right.
They took your call. So with leaders, it's always about that is, how are you encouraging people on the team to push to failure? Because that brings the innovation, the creativity.
Yep.
There's a heck of a lot more fun
A lot more fun.
in that.
And they find more purpose, right? Because I think about it's so easy when you talk about the basketball player at the Y, right? It's so easy to be a big fish in a little pond, or once you get good at something, just to stay there because it's comfortable. And really, what you're talking about is now once you hit that, like go to the next. Like, can you go to the bigger pond? Can you learn the harder, part of computer programming, or can you, go sell to a bigger executive? But it's just pushing to that next level of beyond your comfort in order to grow as an individual.
And that's not necessarily, I agree with you, yes. There's certain aspects, and there's the balance
Yeah.
with all the other all the other lanes
Yep.
in the pool.
Yep.
That if you keep pushing and pushing for this one thing in this one lane, then other lanes in the pool are suffering.
Yep.
So it may be learning the more complex programming or, the bigger strategy work or whatever, but it might be getting into something brand new.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman named Vikas Narula here in town, marvelous individual, business person, runs his own company called Key Hubs, but he wanted to, what he called, swim in different fish bowls.
Okay. Yep.
The people we were talking to were Minneapolis business people.
Yep.
And he's of Indian descent, but yeah, he's telling whether it be Caucasian or black, they're business people in Minneapolis. So I want to get to know different things, and he ended up taking sailing up
Okay.
Just because he ended up teaching at Minneapolis Community College, and he was teaching someone who got out of a 3-year stint in jail.
Yeah.
Learning about that person's life was very different. He was pushing to failure there. But he ended up taking up sailing to the point where he was on Lake Bede-Makaska, and he would go out and he would ask people at the beaches, "Hey, you want to head on out for a sail?" No, that's pushing to failure. There's a lot of no's that
a lot
happen.
of you're strange. I'm good.
Oh, yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm chill. I don't,
What happens when we get out there?
Exactly. There's actually a pair of guys who said, "Yeah, we'll go out there," and they spent like an hour and a half out there just having a blast, and writing his journal. And this was, like late 2018, maybe 2019, and then May 26th of 2020 happens, and he hears about this one guy who ended up getting choked to death by a Minneapolis cop, George Floyd, and he sees the picture on the TV of him. I think I know that guy. He ends up going on his phone, he looks in his journal, and sure enough, he was on, George Floyd and his cousin / best friend were on his sailboat. And he got to know George Floyd on a little bit different level.
Wow.
Which is really kind of, it's just kind of a wild experience.
Right.
So that pushing to failure could be getting into other areas, getting to know other people, to be able to broaden out your experience and get diversity of thought, or whatever the case may be. Because that might be one area where you're failing, is that you're in that lane and not exposing yourself to other people's experiences. And they may be similar to you, but they could have different experiences of the same experience.
Right.
And if you're not pushing to failure and trying to understand other people and see how your truth can be broadened, you're failing then too, if you're not taking that opportunity to push to failure.
Yeah, I think it's super important to call out the different fish bowls as well. Because even a few weeks ago, I ended up going to this Battle of the Bands for my wife's cousin. Didn't want to go, showed up, felt uncomfortable, honestly, started feeling judgmental. Like, I don't belong here. These are those type of people. I was like, Devin, put your walls down. And by the end, I'm having a blast.
Right.
I love the culture. It's one I had never experienced before in the music space. And so it's understanding whether it's that or woodworking. I've never done this. It was the first time, take a shot. Ended up talking to more construction people than I thought I ever would.
Right.
But you expand your thought and you look at things differently. So when we think about looking at things differently, fallacies often come into that because they're the shiny object. They're the easiest to fall for, right? It's the equation that results in some sort of success. Whether it's a very common one, let's post on LinkedIn every day because then everyone will love you, versus, hey, let's post on LinkedIn when you have a genuine thought you want to share or a passion. In your life, I'm sure you've seen plenty of fallacies that you or others have fallen for. What would be the top one you think is important to bring up today?
Oh, wow. Okay. The fallacy is that, we've gone through life, whether it be, 30 some years for you or 56 for me, that we've had so many different things happen in our lives that we know it all.
Okay.
I mean, that's Numbers fallacy. In even if we understand we don't know it all, that if we hear something that goes and connects a little bit with what our value set is or whatever, that we don't have to look behind the curtain.
Okay. Yeah.
On that, to think critically about,
to question it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
That in our society, whatever side of an opinion that you're on, that people are clinging on to something that goes and reinforces the threads that they might have within them, as opposed to saying, okay, it's propaganda,
right?
Because it is.
Yeah, it is.
What is the purpose of that propaganda? To try and get B to think or get others to think a certain way, and they're going to pitch that little bit that reinforces that aspect, as opposed to what that broader truth is. So that fallacy is of not looking at the deeper meanings and deeper questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds like a lot of people suffer from an increasing desire to sort of put their head in the sand, more or less, and kind of confirmation bias, right? I already believe this. This already aligns with my ideology or maybe my sort of
So
subconscious.
I'm right.
Yeah,
Somebody else
exactly.
thinks the
See?
same way I do.
Yep. And I think, people, sort of look at the 2-second surface level for sure and say, oh, yeah, no, see, he agrees. I'm on the right track. And they just completely tune out maybe the deeper meaning or the deeper lesson. So,
It's almost, you hear today a very common statement, right? Is question your beliefs that you were taught as a child, right? And it's very important. Why is this a belief I'm still going to carry? But beyond that, groupthink inside of friendship is so heavy, and it's questioning why you all function the way you do, and more importantly, why isn't there, in my opinion, more conflict inside of friendships? Some of my closest friendships, we have regular, what maybe the world would look at as conflict. I wouldn't consider it conflict. I would just consider it truth and removing the veil on a regular basis to help each other grow. And so I think it's super interesting how you said the belief that we know it all because humans have been around forever is so incorrect, not only because we're all humans and we're still learning the same mistakes over and over again. It's history, right? If we look at history, but more importantly, we need to look at struggles that come to the surface now because of how society is different that former society maybe didn't face or we wouldn't label it the same. So I really like that concept of reminding everyone, think before you agree, or if you have a statement, go home and go, why did I believe that? Why was my conviction so strong, and make sure it aligns with something?
And I think a lot of people are looking at it, whether it be political issues or business to get this thing, is that there is such a focus on one or couple small number of components that are kind of artificial.
Yeah.
They're true, generally, but it's constructed in a way as opposed to what the deeper aspects are of are we loving, ourselves and others, our purpose, our mission, our customers.
Yeah.
Are we, is it at that? Are we really actively looking to see what that broader truth is? Because you come from a different background than me. We're still both Minnesotans, and have different commonalities. But you still, your athletic aspect is much more on the individual versus the team.
Yep.
On the endurance versus 94 feet.
Yeah.
There's a different type of endurance.
Right.
You on a basketball court might not have the same type of endurance that I would have.
Yeah.
And, on some of the things, though, as freaky as you are, you probably do. I don't know how you do that stuff. But
we all question it.
That there's aspect. Your faith is in your religion is deeper than I have for religion.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting conversation for you and me to have.
Yeah.
But I should be open to how that informs the way you see things, and maybe vice versa.
Right.
We're all focused on these little tactical things when there's much more holistic.
And so much more enjoyable, right? Like when I talk to someone that has a different viewpoint, the fruits of that conversation and the fresh perspective doesn't mean I've changed my opinion, but the fresh perspective I have, and in my opinion, softens my heart, and I actually have more love towards that viewpoint or that person because I took the time to understand. Right. With that, though, it's a hard pivot, but I don't know if we're ever going to have love for this non-alcoholic spirit space. Okay. I mean,
we're drinking now.
Yeah,
okay. We're drinking.
So Eric was
that
kind
is a hard pivot.
I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it.
Yeah, that was basically a 180, folks.
Yeah, we call that for the whiplash in the car. I apologize. So as we all know, we try a new one every time. We're going down the spirit lane first, then we'll probably try the non-alcoholic beers and wines and mixed drinks. Today is probably the final bourbon we have to try. We have a little hope because it has to be refrigerated after you open it. The rest don't. But we're gonna all take a sip. We're gonna share our opinions on it, and then we'll. And this is called, I think it's the Free Spirit bourbon.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw.
Yeah, so
the aroma in of itself is a lot different than you would have from an alcohol base. I almost kind of smell chocolate.
Okay. I can't believe you just said that because I tasted chocolate when I drank it.
I haven't taken a drink yet.
I know, that's why I couldn't believe you smelled it.
That was my first thing is what the aroma was going to be. watery,
It's always watery.
thin.
It does have a hint of like chocolate and then like burnt spice. That's the two
A
weird
little bit
things
of
I'm getting
cherry,
out
I
of it.
think, too.
Yeah.
But it's it's a little tough.
I'm gonna be honest, crowd. Let's just don't drink it. just keep it simple. I would give it, honestly though, from episode 1 till now, episode 1 would be a 0, and I would give this a 3. I would say it was better than episode 1. I don't know about you.
100%. Probably, 3, maybe 4 for grading on a curve. But
Yeah.
So to try and expand upon this, what would this taste like in Coke?
That's what we're curious about, and that'll be phase 2. And they have like canned mixed
Okay.
drinks like that for
Right.
us. And I think that's one thing. If these companies saw the reviews, they'd be like, "Hey, savage people, these are made to mix, so you get somewhat of the experience."
Yeah.
But I was always a neat drinker, so I was like, "Hey, let's just try it and see how close it is." What do you think? How do you think it would pair better if you had a Coke with it?
There's so little
I think it would just
flavor.
drowned it.
Yeah, but does that like this the chocolatiness or
Yeah.
some of the burnt spice, would that add just a little bit of a difference to Coke or Pepsi that makes it kind of palatable? Because there might be some people who want to put just a little bit of rum or whiskey in their Coke to be able to get a little bit of pop
We should have had soda with
that
us.
you might have. You might pop more of this in there to be able to
Yep.
get it, knowing that you're not going to get lit.
Right.
I think the vast majority of people, Devin, I'm on the same page. We tend to drink, well, not anymore, but just, neat or on the rocks. But I think a lot of people, especially in social settings, will do a mixed drink or sort of more of a quote unquote cocktail and not just, whiskey, ice glass, call it good. And so I think that these, as you were saying, are, mixed with something probably would replicate it
It'd be
pretty
like a
well.
Jack and Coke to them, probably.
Because what's
Yeah.
missing here isn't the dimension or the aftertaste. It's really the consistency and that front end hit
Yep.
if you're drinking something straight that you're used to. But as far as sort of the more subtle notes and the aftertaste, it's actually not bad.
Yeah, it's not horrific compared to some of the other ones for sure.
It's not. I'm not like still
Yeah.
going like this. I mean, because it is so thin. It was
Right.
watery.
Right.
It didn't have a lot of substance.
It's not hanging
to it.
out for a while. You know,
Yeah.
it just kind of goes away.
Right.
So before we wrap up, obviously,
Is this
most
another hard
important-
pivot?
Yeah, we keep it flowing. you know? Yeah.
Are we swinging back?
Yeah,
It was basically a pit stop.
Yeah,
so we just had to make a
this
quick
is like,
pit
you know,
stop.
when you're going down the interstate, you really have to pee and you can't make it to the gas station. You just hit the rest stop or in the middle of nowhere.
Or are you
just
going
hit
to
the
Chicago
off-ramp.
and you're hitting up on the Bridge McDonald's?
Yeah,
that's where you're going.
The first time I saw those was when I moved to Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to lie, I was 23 years old, 22. It was one of the most exciting
I
moments
thought
of
those
that
things.
trip.
First time I saw this, like, oh man, these are sweet.
Yeah, right? I was like, I'm
Yeah.
walking over the interstate and I'm eating food. I was like, this is
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
So, yeah, we hit one of those hard and now we're just on-ramping right back on.
All right, we're back. We're back on our way into Chicago.
Yeah.
All right.
Back into Chicago, about to land the plane. For the audience, though, to be able to have it landed, we need to talk about a challenge.
Okay.
And so far, I mean, we've covered some incredible things. We've high functioning depression, chasing failure, learning to see the other side of the coin, and prep arguments and discussion. I shouldn't say arguments, debates and discussions with people, and valuing other viewpoints and not thinking you know it all. So to wrap it up, what is the challenge you're going to leave with them? You left them a lot of good nuggets to chew on, but what would be that final thing? Hey, for the next week, audience, I challenge you to do this.
I do workshops on this where I go and ask leadership teams and I ask them a question: what makes one financial analyst better than the one next to them? They have the same training, same schooling, they're using the same tools, they're theoretically in the same cultural environment. But what makes one better than the one next to them? You could say that with leaders, you could say that with salespeople, you could say that with spouses, what have you. But if you look at that financial analyst, you mentioned checking things off the boxes, just getting it done, or do they see things a little bit differently? They love this process that they're going to ask some different questions that probe a little bit different. That VP of marketing could have just shot you down,
Right.
But as a leader, he saw something a little different that was going to ask for some different questions to get some different things. They love things a little bit differently. They see things, again, they look at it differently. They respect the situation. They're looking to serve the person the person they're supporting,
Right,
the business unit they're supporting, and they probably have more fun at what they're doing. So the challenge I would have, if you're a leader or if you're just an individual, how do you look differently compared to your colleague right next to you? Or if you're leading, what is it about these people, and how do I actually help lead in a way that the person that maybe isn't as adept, you can help them move up? How do you show some love towards them? How do you help understand, see differently what is their world that keeps them from maybe performing the way that they could, want to, should? How are you going to serve them towards success or failure, pushing to failure? And, how are you going to bring some more fun? And as you lift that person who's not as adept up, you're going to do the same thing with the person who is. So that rising tide's going to float all boats. So how do you sit there and look and see how you can love a little bit more? Not just love individuals, but that process of leading, that process of trying to maximize human potential. And listen to the answers that come back in your head and see if you can go and apply them. Just try them out and push to failure on your own.
What I'm hearing out of it too is it sounds like you're really talking about a sacrificial love. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for that individual so they can grow and become happier and more successful and get more out of life. So really, to the audience, you're going, take a moment to have an introspective of what makes you different, and then also maybe where you need to be different, where you need to be open, and then how do you love onto others and get them to do that as well in their careers so they can continue to grow up. Would that be a good synopsis?
There is, yeah, that is pretty good, because I also have in the book an aspect of conversation with two salespeople, one that you connect with well and one that you don't. Were those conversations different? Because neither one of them has hit their quota in 2 quarters.
So true.
Did you show more love to the one that you're more connected with than the one you didn't?
Yeah.
Was it, hey, is there something going on in your world? You're not cutting it.
Right.
We need changes. So you can look at, so yeah, there's love about how do you actually kind of bring that out and help others, but there's also that love for yourself. How do you love yourself enough to make sure that you are expressing similar types of love to everybody that you're interacting with? That you take the time to be able to see things again, look at from a different perspective.
Yeah.
That you're focused in on service, that you're bringing fun for yourself. Because the more that you feel these things, these 4 forces within yourself, the more you can help others bring that and have the team be able to bring that with themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. So before we wrap it up, you're talking about a lot of fundamentals, I think, need more processing and chewing on. What is the name of your book, just so the audience can go?
Yeah.
I know you're not here to promote it. He didn't even ask to, but you spoke and touched on a lot of good things. If anyone's connecting with it, they're going to want to find it and be able to understand it deeper.
Yeah, the book's called The 4 Fundamental Forces of Leadership.
Okay.
Pretty simple. I was honored to be able to get 2 forwards written, one by the COO of Target, John Mulligan, another, and I'm not able to say the name of it, but you'll be able to figure it out, a Fortune 150 Minnesota mining and manufacturing company, the CTO, John Banovitz, on there. It's available. You got that, huh? It's available at Amazon in paperback, audiobook, and ebook. So whatever format that you're interested in consuming it, it's available there.
Perfect. Well, audience. Oh, Evan has something to.
For anybody that's looking for it, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes, so there'll be links to that, so you can find it and make sure you're getting the right copy.
Perfect. So till next time, I appreciate everyone tuning in on Do You Even Fail. We covered it a lot, and I would say kind of how I would summarize it in my head is take a moment to step out of your swim lane, learn how to love yourself while you're in it, but more importantly, look around you. How can you love and support everyone else so you finish at the same time with the same goals? And most importantly, do challenge yourself, and tune in next week for what your future challenge will be.
Thanks for having me, Devin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Took quite a fall, didn't we, Master Bruce?
And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.